Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well this fine evening. Guess what? I got the Wayback Machine all warmed up and ready to go. Why don't you guys just hop in and let's check out some early encounters reported in the news. Before we do that, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook version, is available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. They were written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. The links to those are in the description as well. Now, I've taken enough of your time, and the Wayback Machine is waiting. Let's get on with today's upload, shall we? Wild Man of Kansas, strange monster at large which many think is a gorilla. Olathe, Kansas, June 24th, 1893. People living near here are greatly excited over the antics of a strange animal that roams the woods. Robert Sanders ran into town Wednesday night and said that he had been chased for over a mile by a hideous creature that appeared half man and half devil. The next morning, a man employed on the farm of Edward Lane, living half a mile north of Olathe, reported having seen the animal. Since then, several others have described the animal as they saw it in the woods. All agree upon the description and say that it appears to be a fully 7 feet tall, with a heavy covering of brown hair, and it is naked. It stands in a half-swooping posture, with long arms crossed over its breast. But when startled or in pursuit, it gets over the ground rapidly with a swinging gait. Robert Wilson, a dairyman 2.5 miles northwest of Olathe, reports that the monster killed 2 cows and a calf belonging to him. He went to Olathe for assistance, and armed men are now scouring the woods in search of the animal. It is thought by many to be an African gorilla that has escaped a traveling menagerie. Comes to us from the Sunday Herald, Syracuse, New York, June 25th, 1893. Wild man seen near Dover. He frightened women and killed a dog, but cannot be caught. Dover, New Jersey, January 6th, 1894. The residents of this vicinity are excited over the sudden appearance of a wild man near the town. He has taken up his abode in a vacant Malone homestead and first made his appearance to a number of women who were passing near the place. He uttered threatening sounds and started toward them, causing the women to run away. A searching party was sent out, but the man could not be found. A few days later, he was seen running wild through the woods wearing no clothing. Another party was sent out and dogs were used. When the man was surrounded, he grabbed one of the dogs and killed it with a club, and then made his escape. He is still at large. That comes to us from the New York Times, New York, January 7th, 1894. Wild man chases boys. Middleburg, Pennsylvania, March 27th, 1894. 2 colored boys, William George and Jeremiah Johnson of this town, which is 3 miles south of Greencastle, tell of a strange story of having been chased by a wild man well in a wooded patch of road near that place on Saturday. Their story was incredulously received Monday morning when a man by the name of Thomas rushed into town with a story of a wild fight with a bearded giant with a club. His description of the man and his fright convinced many of people that the boy's account may be true. A party has been searching for the man, but without success. The Star and Sentinel, Gettysburg, PA, March 27th, 1894. The Man-Beast of Deep Creek area, Washington County, Kentucky, May 16th, 1894. Over in Washington County, near the line of Mercer, reigns a being, whether man or beast, mystifies all of the neighborhood. 4 months the housewives have been missed, their chicken eggs, milk, meat from meat houses, and half-grown pigs and young lamb. At first, all efforts and schemes to catch the guilty one proved of no avail. Camp bands were organized and several suspected thieves were whipped or shot. About 10 days ago, Jack Agee told what he saw emerging from his spring house. And as the story got circulated, the children and women were scared nearly out of their wits. The male portion of the neighborhood, however, would put no credence in the story. But on the quiet, all set watch for the strange being, and Wednesday of last week, Joseph Ewelt rose one morning before day and went to his spring house, 100 yards distance from his dwelling. His wife and nearly grown son became alarmed at his continued absence, went in search of him, and found him at the door of the spring house in a faint. They restored him to consciousness, and he told them what he saw, Jack Agee's man-beast, and that he ran out of the spring house as he opened the door, that he had great, long white hair hanging down from his head and face, was of course as a horse's mane. His legs were covered with hair, and the only article of clothing he wore was a piece of sheepskin over his lower portion of body, reaching nearly to his knees. He said a light came from his eyes and mouth similar to fire. When it became known around the Ewalt had seen Agee's man-beast, sober-headed men began to think and set a plan to catch the monster. Be it what it may, in the neighborhood near the south of Deep Creek is a cave of considerable proportions, and the natural conclusion of nearly all was that there would be a place to find their game. In the meantime, they, as the neighborhood, to keep watch for sights of their man-beast. And early Sunday morning, F. Boston and his sons Tom and James saw the object of their watch walking in a half-gallop, half-run from their barn. Notwithstanding, the men were armed. They were badly frightened, and after they saw the object enter the barn, all three were afraid to enter to try to capture the terrible-looking creature. They kept hid, and were not seen by the monster, standing in a half-erect position, nearly 6.5 feet tall. His feet were like the claws of a beast or brute, with long claws. His hands were like those of a feline more than human. The men had only to wait a few moments. In fact, before they could come to some action or get over their fright, the creature came out of the barn in the same half-gallop, half-gait, and made for the creek. By this time the men started in safe pursuit. Tom Boston foolishly shot at it, and the creature half turned and glanced at him, increasing his gait, but never dropping the 3 large chickens he had in his claws. The Bostons managed to keep sight of the creature for only a half a mile or so. They vowed he saw him swifter than a horse. Just as they got to the top of the hill, about 500 yards off, they were rewarded by seeing the brute man turn with a wild, scared look, glance around, and enter the cave. The men went to the mouth of the cave, but would not enter. They saw feathers, bones, etc. scattered around the entrance. They returned home and reported what they had seen. And Tuesday, with a half a dozen men, went to the cave and made a partial survey proceeding in several hundred yards. They saw flesh, indications of habitation by bones, feathers, pieces of calf, and sheepskin being strewn around. The passages grew smaller and dwindled, and no one of the party would enter alone, though one, Joe Smith, went in 30 or 40 feet, when the most unearthly yell the man had ever heard greeted them. They were good stout men, but they cowered before the yell, and beat a hasty retreat to the main passage of the cavern. But after consultation they agreed it would not do to kill or be killed, and they gave up their search for another time. The men brought 2 bludgeons from the cave with them to show considerable handling and resembled an Indian club. Another party will make a survey of the cave in effort to capture the beast. In the meantime, women and children are staying indoors in that neighborhood. Comes to us from the Hartford Courant, Connecticut, New York, May 16th, 1894. Wild man seen west of Mayfield, Nevada, June 17th, 1894. A wild man who is said to be almost entirely nude has been discovered roaming the mountains west of Mayfield, his appearance striking terror into the souls of the residents in the vicinity. Nevada State Journal, Reno, June 17th, 1994. Wild man hunted, Loudon Township, Illinois, July 25th, 1894. Organized parties are searching for a wild man here who is slaughtering calves, pigs, lambs belonging to farmers. The Davenport Daily Leader, Iowa, July 25th, 1894. A wild man roaming the hills near Missouri causes terror to nervous people. Sedalia, Missouri, September 17th, 1894. A wild man roaming the hills near Flat Creek, south of Sedalia, is causing no terror among the nervous people of that locality. The wild man is a shaggy, ferocious-looking individual, over 6 feet 6 inches tall and clad in rags, with long matted hair and a shaggy beard, but never offers to molest anyone. In fact, he bounds away like a deer at the sight of anyone. In the bluffs across the creek from the old ice house, they found what is supposed to be the den of the wild man. In a cave far back in the rocks was a large bed of leaves, protected from the water and rain where the man slept. The cave was entered in a roundabout way, as if to mislead any possible pursuers. Among the leaves were several heavy sticks, worn smooth from much handling, and were perhaps weapons of defense. Scattered around on the ground were lambskin, parts of rabbit and squirrel, and a number of hogs' ears. The wild man himself could not be found. However, it is now known that he has been roaming the hills for a month or more, as he has frequently been seen in the blackberry patches where he ate the berries. A number of farmers' wives were badly frightened at the different times. An attempt will be made to secure bloodhounds and track the man. Comes to us from the Hamilton Daily Republican, Ohio, September 17th, 1894. The Wild Man of Snowball, New South Wales, Australia, November 30th, 1894. On the 3rd of October, last, young Johnny McWilliams was riding from his home at Snowball to Gindon, P.O. When about halfway, the boy was startled by an extraordinary sight of a wild man or gorilla. The boy states that the wild man suddenly appeared from behind a tree about 30 yards from the road, stood looking at him for a few seconds, and then turned and ran for the wooded hills, a mile or so from the road. The animal ran for about 200 feet across the open country before disappearing over a low hill, so that the boy had ample time to observe the beast. The boy states that he appeared to be over 6 feet in height and heavily built. He describes it as a big man covered with long hair. It did not run very fast, and tore up the dust with its nails, and in jumping a log it struck it against its limb, when it bellowed like a bullock. When running, it kept looking back at the boy till it disappeared. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the boy describes everything he saw minutely. The boy is a truthful and mainly young fellow, well acquainted with all the known animals in New South Wales bush, and persists that he could not have been mistaken. For many years there have been tales of trappers coming across enormous tracks of some unknown animal in the wilds around Snowball. Of course, these tales were received with doubt, and put down as clever romancing on the part of a possum hunter. But the story of Johnny McWilliams is believed by all who know the boy as a true tale, and proof of the existence of such an animal in New South Wales should be of some interest into the naturalists. That comes to us from the Wabean Observer, November 30th, 1894. Excuse me. He, she, or it, beast or human. Newburgh, New York, July 30th, 1895. All Margaretville, a town near here, and its environs are in a state of excitement over the appearance of a ferocious ape-like being which devours horses, sheep, and cattle, and spits their bones to get the marrow. The monster splits their bones to get the marrow, The monster had a hand-to-hand fight with William Cook yesterday and threw his opponent 20 feet and nearly killed him. The monster is the most energetic summer man, if he is a man, that has ever visited these parts. Peter Thomas, who is neither weak-willed nor a doubter, was driving a team of horses along the lonely road near Margaretville last Friday night, when he says the horrible monster hopped out from the underbrush along the road and stood in the middle of the road, brandishing a pair of long and hairy arms and uttering raunchious, inarticulate cries. Mr. Thomas is a truthful man, as everyone who knows him is willing to vouch. He says that he rolled against the dashboard of his wagon, almost petrified with fear. The creature leapt high in the air and, with loud cries, landed on the ground within a foot or two of the wagon. It seized the high horse, and, with the faculty with beckoned long practice, broke the animal's neck and divested it of its harness. The monster then tore the harness from the still quivering form of the horse and bore off the carcass to the woods. The other horse broke into a run, and all steaming and with its body decked with foam, tore into the village. Mr. Thomas, pale as a ghost, clung feebly to the dashboard, and with his eyes almost popping from their sockets, looked behind him at the stretch of dusty roads. He was taken to the house of the public entertainment, where, under the stimulus of Restivaries, he was able to tell his story. He could give no adequate description of the monster, but said it seemed to be taller than a man and had sinewy arms covered in hair. The creature, he said, also has wild eyes, but he could not describe the face beyond saying that it was devilish in expression. Men are scarce at the Margaretville. It is a little village, such frequently as a resort. However, bands of youth in deck trousers and blue coats joined the farmers to hunt the creature to its lair. Several young women, inclined to be flippant, said the monster, if a man would be in great demand if invented to the next hop. Mr. Thomas, who never said I doubt, led the searching party. The camp of the creature was discovered on Saturday afternoon, about 2 miles from Margaretville. It was in the clearing in a woods. In the center of the space, there was a smoldering amber of big fire. How does that make sense? Smoldering ambers of big fire? What the fuck are they writing? Anyway, around it were the half-gnawed bones of sheep and cattle and part of the remains of Mr. Thomas's unfortunate horse. No trace of the monster could be found in the vicinity. The farmers were horror-stricken. One of them said that he never in his 40 years as a man and boy had seen anything so weird-like before. John Cook, a farmer, was a member of the hunting party. He returned home last evening. He claims to have seen and attacked the monstrous stranger, but says that bullets appeared to have no effect on it. Cook got in close quarters with the creature finally and was thrown 20 feet by it. Cook describes the wild man as being about 7 feet tall, entirely nude, covered with black hair, with a long beard, and teeth which project from its mouth like fangs. Some of the natives are debating the question whether they would have a right to shoot the wild man, and are afraid they would be indicted for murder if they did so. A wild man, he appears to Selectman Smith and scares his bulldog. Hartford, Connecticut, August 21st, 1895. Last Saturday, Selectman Riley W. Smith went up to Colebrook on business. Mr. Smith, while there, went over into the fields and began picking berries from a low brush in the field. While he was stooped over picking berries, his bulldog, which is noted for its pluck, ran with a whine to him and stationed itself between his legs. Mrs. Smith, being in a bent-over position picking berries, a second after, a large man, stark naked and covered with hair all over, his body ran out of a clump of bushes, and, with fearful yells and cries, made for the woods at lightning speed, where he soon disappeared. Selectman Smith is a powerful, wiry man, and has the reputation of having lots of sand, and his bulldog is also noted for its pluck, but Riley admits that he was badly scared, and that his dog was fairly paralyzed with fear. If any of the readers of The Citizen have lost a wild, hairy man of the woods 6 feet high, and want to find him, they can go up to Colebrook, and when near the Lewis Place, wander around in the woods and fields and perhaps recover their lost property. Hartford Courant, Connecticut, August 12th, 1895. That last sentence was nuts on that. I wonder if that was a joke. Have you lost your wild man? Well, go up to Colebrook and he's right there. What the hell? And how do these people write like this? Like, what is going on? Anyway, moving on, sorry. Built like a horse, wild man creates terror among farmers around Injun Meadow. He scares brutes as well as human beings. Posse to organize and make determined effort to capture. Winsted, Connecticut, August 23rd, 1895. The wild man has seen again yesterday by passengers on Dode stage, en route to Winsted from Sansfield, Massachusetts. He was in the same track of brush as when seen last Saturday by Selectman Smith, which is 5 miles from here on the old and lonesome highway leading to Colebrook. The wild man lives in Injun Meadow, as it is known to the countrymen. He is thought to be one of the family of 3 wild men seen 2 years ago. The man seen by Mr. Smith had no clothes, but was covered with hair. The wild man was seen in Cannon Mountain a few months ago, is thought to be the same person. Farmers in this section are terrorized and afraid to go outdoors after dark, and the robberies of Henry's and mysterious disappearance of calves and lambs here, and even in Sansfield and Colebrook farms, are blamed upon the wild man. 500 men leave here Sunday morning to hunt the strange character. They will go out in gangs and surround Injun Meadow and Cobble Mountain. Farmers have given the use of their teams free, while every man of the posse is warned to go armed. On Saturday, Riley Smith, while coming over the road, stopped to pick a few berries, but no sooner had he commenced to eat than the wild man emerged from the center of the patch of berries. Smith was scared to death. His dog commenced to whine, and with his tail between his legs, sought refuge in Smith's wagon under a pile of blankets. Mr. Smith described the man as awful-looking sight. He's large in stature, and his head is the most scariest part of his body, being nearly the size of a horse's head. His teeth resemble those of a horse in size, but are pointed. His hands are extra large. Over 100 able bodies search for Riley Smith's wild man. Winston, Connecticut, August 27th, 1895. Selectman Riley Smith, who recently had the encounter with the wild man, offered a reward for the capture of the creature. On Sunday morning, over 100 men and boys met at the corner of Lake and Main with all sorts of weapons and ready to hunt. The areas to be hunted were Injun Meadow, Cobble Hill, and Lowsaw Road. Unfortunately, the hunters returned empty-handed. Nevertheless, there have been other sightings of the creature, to include George Hoskins, who said he saw the wild man leaving his hen house with 2 hens under his arm. Furthermore, Jim Madrath proclaimed he took a Kodak picture of the man with a mass of hair on his head, but none of his body. Jim explained this condition by stating his camera was so frightened that it could not see straight. However, two ladies from New York say they saw very clearly the large animal cross their path, turn, stand on its hind legs, and stare at them. They believe the wild man to be an ape or baboon. We also have word from our chief of police, Steve Weller, who stated he tracked the gorilla man into the swamp and lost the trail and scent. Comes to us from Winstead Evening Citizen, Connecticut, August 27th, 1895. Wild man kills traveler's horse. Delmar County, New York. Wow, that's up by me. August 29th, 1895. A traveler passing through the county states that a wild man seized his horse, killed it, and then dragged it away. Comes from the Daily Press, August 29th, 1895. Wild man's identity, strange marauder, now known to be full-grown gorilla, has been prowling around for 3 years, will be found hard to shoot and still harder to capture. Winstead, Connecticut, August 30th, 1895. The Connecticut wild man that has divided honors with the sea serpent is a full-grown gorilla. John G. Hall runs a stage between here and Sansfield, Mass. While he was passing through Colebrook, a large animal crossed the highway on all fours and leapt a stone wall. Hall and his passengers at first thought it was the wild man. The animal, when the stage approached, stood erect. Hall drew a revolver. The beast did not stir. Hall stopped his horses and was getting a good aim at the sprute when off it sped on 4 feet into Injun meadows, uttering awful cries. Mrs. Monshone and Sadie Woodhouse of New York City, who were summering in Colebrook, also encountered the animal while they were driving in Winstead. The creature then espied it in the Injun meadow while standing upright. They are positive that the wild man is a gorilla. They say that it has large white teeth, black hair, muscular form, and is about 6.5 feet tall. It is thought the gorilla made its escape from some circus and has since made its home among Litchfield Hills. It has been heard from in Norfolk, East Cannon, North Goshen, and Sansfield, Mass. The gorilla spent last winter in the southern part of Norfolk. Charles Benson of our town saw it jump over from a tree. The brute chased him into his house. A party of Norfolk people saw it enter a hole in the mountain last spring, and after closing the opening with huge chains, they went to bed. In the morning they found the chains broken. John Williams of West Norfolk met the gorilla 3 years ago while he was returning home one night. The ground was covered with snow and the footprints of the animal were traced into the mountains. A son of Richard Parsons of Sansfield, farmer, saw the gorilla steal one of his rabbits. Mrs. George Marvin of South Norfolk saw the gorilla robbing her hen house one morning last winter. It became so hungry that nearly every farmer in the outskirts of Norfolk saw it prowling about their farm. Carl Moore and Joseph Burley shot at the gorilla last winter, but birdshot had no effect. That comes to us from the North Adams Transcript, Massachusetts, August 30th, 1895. Searching for the Wild Man, Hartford, Connecticut, September 3rd, 1895. When the Sansfield stage reached Colebrook near Winstead at 10 o'clock this morning, Mrs. Culver ran from her house and stopped the stage driver. She said the wild man, or gorilla, whichever it is, spent the night on her doorstep. She was greatly alarmed. Mrs. Culver begged that help be summoned to catch the local terror. 6 policemen and a large body of citizens set out from Winstead as soon as the stage reached there, and the country around Miss Culver's house will be thoroughly searched for the wild man. New York Times, September 4th, 1895. A wild man, this one not of Borneo, but West Virginia. Bluefield, West Virginia, November 9th, 1895. A party of hunters who were roaming the woods near Elkhorn saw a man ascending a rocky height completely naked. The hunter surrounded the fellow and made an attempt to capture him. But as soon as he saw the men, he yelled and ran to the top of the hill. Newark Daily Advocate, Ohio, November 9th, 1895. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that little trip in the Wayback Machine to check out some early encounters reported in the news. We are almost coming to an end of my collection of news clippings. We got about another 2 or 3 of these little trips. So I hope you enjoy them as much as I enjoy sharing them with you. I find them very interesting. What I don't find interesting or amusing is the bullshit way they wrote back then. Completely ridiculous. Like, they just, I don't even know. They didn't spell right. They just put random words in, and sometimes they know absolutely no sense. And then I'm thinking, as I'm reading it, you guys are going to think I'm mildly challenged. Well, that may be true. So my parents used to say as I was a child. Just kidding. No, that's not a kidding. Anyway, have a great night, guys. See ya!